And you know how she Willow sometimes runs away when you try to grab her? Russell?
Yes.
So if we kind of encourage that, she's gonna always take off whenever you try to approach her, because it's kind of like a bad habit. So I would recommend having the leash dragging on her, like a really thin leash, like a cat leash in the house. So you can actually help her out a little bit, so she learns not to run away from you when you try to reach for her. Because that's a habit that is a little bit hard to break with little dogs. So you may want to try doing that. I will suggest doing something like that. So when you try to approach her, you step on the leash, and then when she tries to run away, she won't be able to. And then when she lets you touch it, yes, and then give her a treat. Because it's a bad habit for her to run away whenever you want to like talk to her or like grab her or help her out a little bit.
She gets in these episodes, and I think it's to do when she's hungry. Like, she hasn't eaten since lunch.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Like there's many different reasons why a puppy will not want to do something you say. There's many different reasons, but it doesn't matter. If you can support them to learn what the right action is, that would be best. So for example,
Okay.
if I see her, she's taking off on me, well, I want to think about it. Is this a behavior I want? Like if she gets hurt and I try to approach her, is she going to take off on me? So that behavior is something I'm going to have to stop right away. I don't want her to ever run away from me. I want her to come to me. So in order to help her out when this is really little, I want to have that leash dragging so I can direct her and bring her to me, or I can give her a treat or lure her towards me. Either one of those things will work. But basically, you are what you practice most of the time. So if she's practicing a lot running away from you, she's going to get better at that. Whether it's because she's hungry or not hungry or uncomfortable or not comfortable, it really doesn't matter. It's something I may not want to practice too much. Okay. Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to our Zoom class. So today is a free, complimentary Zoom class where we talk a little bit about dog psychology and behavior, because we're trying to get a little bit more knowledgeable on that subject. So when you come to classes or when you do training on your own, you're actually able to do it better. So today we're going to talk about a big subject, and that subject is called flexibility. Now, let's look at what happens when a dog does not have flexibility. So the dog will hear a sound and you go, woo! And that's an alert bark, because it's kind of like a little bit higher pitch and it's continuous. Woo! So that's like an alert bark. So what happens is the dog heard that sound. Now, if the dog doesn't have a good break of flexibility, what happens is every other time the dog hears a sound similar to that, they're going to choose the same behavior. And so flexibility is the ability to react differently, emotionally or physically, in a particular circumstance. When a particular novelty is given, it comes into an environment. So again, it's the ability to react differently, emotionally or physically in a different circumstance. And it could also be when novelty items occur. So it could be something is introduced into the environment and the dog in that moment will choose to react in a way they have reacted before. And they don't want to change. They're kind of stuck in this situation. So now going back a little bit about why we're talking about breaks and why we're talking about developing certain words in your dog is because dogs have this wall in their brain, and it's not like a physical wall, but it's made of neurons. But to make it easier for us to understand, we're going to call it the wall of understanding. And this wall is made up of bricks, and every brick is a concept. And according to the concept, okay, they are going to be able to act and have actions and reactions and choose emotions according to what they have built on their wall. So if they have a brick for flexibility and this brick is cracked, missing, or crumbled, that means they're not able to be flexible. So being flexible is the ability to change your emotional state, to try different things physically, emotionally in a particular circumstance. That is to be flexible. And if you really think about it, a lot of if you ever had children or have children now, you'll notice that children will lack flexibility at times. And so they will get stuck in particular emotion, particular tantrums, because we haven't built that flexibility in the best way possible. So to build flexibility, how do you build flexibility? Let's talk first about dogs, and then we'll talk about how to build flexibility in people, because your dog is your mirror image. So if I'm lacking flexibility and I always want to do the same things the same way all the time, then my dog is going to mimic that. Okay. So the first way in which you build flexibility, the first and most important way is not having a routine. So if you're always expecting to wake up at 6:30 a.m. in the morning, always put your shoes on same way, always take out your dog at the same time, you're building a mind that is not able to have change. Flexibility starts by having a routine when it comes to what you're going to achieve daily in life. So that is what is like very standard and very strict. So I'm always going to like wake up. I'm always going to put my clothes on. I'm always going to eat breakfast. I'm always going to walk my dog. I'm always going to feed my dog, doing games. That is always going to happen, but it doesn't have to happen at the same time every day. So that's huge. It's important for you to build change in your routine, because that creates a flexible mind. You brush your teeth with the right, try brushing it with the left. It's challenging. It's challenging to do things like that, right? So for your dog, flexibility is not natural, because a dog is not flexible because it creates something called judgment bias. So let's look at this. In nature, if I see a bush moving, okay, and the bush is moving, and I'm a dog and I approach and there was a predator, I'm gonna get eaten and I die. Okay, now if I see a bush moving, I get scared and I run away, I'm gonna survive. Now if I approach gently and slowly, just barely approaching, and something scares me and I run away and I survive, I create a judgment bias. So every time that a bush similar to that look moves, I'm gonna run away. So I'm stuck in that pattern because it allowed me to survive. Okay, so the lack of flexibility can be something that the dog learned as a way to cope for protection. So now when we start changing things in the environment, we're telling the dog constantly that actually new things are healthy for you. Experiencing different things in new ways is good. Flexibility is good. Are we good with the first part? So the first part of being flexibility is being able to change your routine. But the things that happen throughout the day are always there. It's just the time that they happen at, like how you walk down the street. Like I may go around a car instead of like straight to my car. I may go around a pole instead of straight to my car. So you want to change little things like that allow the dog to have more flexibility. Okay. Now, if you live with children and small children, there's a little bit of flexibility there, because whenever you try to do anything, everything goes like whoop, out of the window, and then you're gonna have to kind of like improvise and try to do everything, and that's what happens. So that's good. That's the good thing about having children. They help you with flexibility. Okay, second item about flexibility. Flexibility again is important because when you're flexible, you're able to problem solve more often. You don't give up so easily. Okay, so that's a good thing about flexibility. So the second way to create flexibility is to do something called object games. So an object game is when you choose any object. For example, I'm gonna choose my leash. Okay, here's my leash. And I'm gonna place that leash on the ground and I'm gonna point at it. And my dog is gonna maybe put their nose on it. I'm gonna say yes and reward with a treat. And then my dog is gonna be, what? If I put my nose on the leash, I get a treat? And then you're gonna wait for your dog again. You may wanna point at it again. And then if the dog points their nose at the leash, you're not gonna give a treat because that's the same thing he already did. So now maybe the dog paused the leash and you're gonna say yes and you're gonna give a treat. So you're looking for different actions. So you have the same item, the same object, and you may like point at it a little bit to the dog to initiate that flexibility, but you're only going to reward different choices. So the dog is like, what? The dog is going to be confused. Like, what do I have to do to get you to give me a treat? And this is huge because the dog now has to think and problem some. Sometimes the dog will get frustrated and walk away. What does that tell you about your dog? They lack grit, because grit is the ability to persevere in a situation where something is difficult. So again, now we're going to build that. Now, why is it that we want to build flexibility again? Because everything in life involves flexibility. You're way more balanced if you're flexible. If you have to go right because that's a better choice, your emotions won't stop you from that. You won't have a hiccup. So, and also when you're trying to do other things like teach advanced obedience or nose work or agility or anything like that, like if I bring my dog to an agility court and I don't have flexibility, if I change one obstacle, my dog is not going to make it because he's going to be like, what? You change it. I don't know what to do. You understand? So that's why we want to build flexibility. So the second way to build flexibility is to play something called object games. So you choose an object, any object, a cardboard box, a remote control for the TV, a leash, a shoe, like anything. And then you want to see if your dog can offer different behaviors that are not destructive. So if my dog is doing poking with the nose, yes, treat. If my dog is pawing with the thing, yes, treat. So I'm trying different things. Now, once the dog gave me 3 willing choices, something that the dog came up with by themselves, okay? Now I can start to ask my dog to do different things with the item by me teaching them. For example, if I have a leash, I may put my leash in a circle like this, okay? Like have a hoop and ask the dog to put their head through. Okay, and when they get their head through, I say, yes, I give the treat. And then I can do something else, like I can put my leash like this and I can ask the dog to jump over the leash. And then I say, yes, and I have a treat. So how many different ways can you interact with that item with your dog? Now, you can put one paw, that could be the right. You can put the left paw, you can put a back paw on it. The other paw, you can make the dog lay on it. You can get the dog sit on it. You can get the dog to back up towards it, move forward towards it. Those are all different things and it builds flexibility. And again, all I have to do when my dog gave me after 3 choices or so, okay, all I have to do is say yes and reward with my treat. Once that happens, I can actually get my dog to do different behaviors by luring. Now, if you don't know what luring is, okay, luring means putting the treat on the nose of the dog and guiding the dog towards achieving a certain goal with the treat stuck to the nose. That's what luring is. Okay, if you don't know how to lure, we'll help you. Don't worry about it. We'll help you. Bring it up and we'll teach you how to do it. Now, that's the second way. So the first way is don't have a routine that is stuck. Don't do the same thing at the same time, the same way every day. That creates a dog that is incapable of change. Number 2, play object games. You can play for 2 minutes. It doesn't have to have a big deal. Now, a dog like Quattro, which, hi guys, it's like a dog that lacks a little bit of flexibility because of his breed. His breed, actually, Lagottos, they were bred for like very focused activities. Like you're gonna do this thing. So it's good for us to build that flexibility. Now, Misty actually really enjoys the object game because she enjoys just hearing the word yes, I think. So she'll try different things and she'll poke it and she'll like do different things with her nose and she likes that because Misty doesn't like to move too much. So if it's in a short and like close in quarters and it's an easy game, she'll nail it like perfectly, right? So that's one game. Now, third way, pardon me, to build flexibility. Now, another thing that you guys probably know is you probably also know about mark training or bed manners. So mark training is when the dog puts their front paws on a mark. And then bed training is when you say bed and the dog goes to their bed. But did you know that there's different ways to go to the mark? Like you can go on the right, you can go on the left, you can go backwards to the mark, you can go jumping on the mark, you can go to the bed backwards and actually climb up the bed backwards. So those are all different ways to achieve the same behavior. So again, I'm trying to build a little bit of flexibility in my dog's brain. And this is important because how you play games, you play life. How you play life, you create all different goals to you. So if you're a very serious person and you take things very personally, then anything can trigger you. I mean, think about it. Sometimes when you're upset, anybody can say blue, and then you'll be even more upset because we get stuck in that train of thought. So for us, it's important to have that flexibility to be able to look at it and inculcate, that means educate that into our dogs. So flexibility, very huge concept. Okay, so mark training and boundaries and bed boundaries and bed manners. Those are also building flexibility if you go to the boundary, to the bed, or you go to the mark in a different way. Now, do I have to master all of this at once? Absolutely not. You can play one of these 2-3 minutes a day and you're building the seed of flexibility. Now, when you're looking at the life that you have and the life with your dog, you have anywhere between 13 to 19 years with your dog, unless you have a giant breed. Okay, you don't have to rush, but building flexibility in every day a little bit is gonna take you really far, because it's gonna allow your dog to not get stuck in the particular emotion or particular body language. Okay, all right, next way to build flexibility. So just to do a little bit of a reminder of how you build flexibility is: number 1, different routine; number 2, object games; number 3, mark training or bed manners; number 4 is called the me games. So me games are games where you are the center of the attention of the dog. So it could be as simple as jump on my lap. The dog has to land on you, and because it's you that is important, that would be a me game. Now, another me game would be engagement exercises, like backing up and the dog chasing you; proximity games, such as tossing the treat to the side and the dog comes back to you. Every time the dog has to come back to you and you are the end result, that's called a me game. Now, me games are really important because it teaches a dog muscle memory, that you are more important than a squirrel, more important than everything else outdoors. So that muscle memory takes a long time to develop. And it's just like a yo-yo when you play with it. I apologize if I mispronounce it. That's the Y's are really hard for people to speak Spanish. But like, I mean a yo-yo, like you toss it like this and it comes back to you with more energy. It actually does. You toss it and gravity pulls it back to you. So that's what you're trying to do when you play me games. If you ever play a game like engagement or proximity or anything like that, and the dog, and you only played it once, that won't work, because the point of those games is that the dog comes back to you immediately. So you have to play a couple of them at least. I usually play three to four before I free my dog and I stop doing it. So I'm walking down the street, my dog looks at me, yes, boom, one proximity game, one engagement game. And now why is it that a me game creates flexibility? Now, a me game creates flexibility because the trigger for a me game is actually to look at you. But the dog doesn't know what me game you're gonna play. So the dog has to be flexible and he has to watch your body language to kind of predict what that game is gonna be. And what that game happens, then the dog, then right after, like if you do proximity one, right after that, you can do like bowling. And then you can do engagement one. So you can change things. So the dog has to be flexible and has to adapt. And that's why me games are so extraordinary, because you can change so many things so quickly. Okay, now there's another thing that I like to mention about me games. I apologize, guys. I am reading my notes. As you know, I'm new to Zoom, so it takes me a little bit. Sometimes I get sidetracked. So thank you for your patience. Okay, now another thing that is important to know is that whatever game you play, you can play on the right hand side and on the left. You can also play from behind and from in front of you. You cannot play while stationary or while you're moving or while you're running. So all those different changes build flexibility. So when I hear a person say, hey, oh, I know engagement 1, I can get my dog to back up. When I back up, my dog will always follow me. Really? Can you be behind your dog and will your dog turn around in a second and follow you? Can you go on the right and or the left of your dog and can you follow you like this? Because most people will practice the same way over and over again. And why is it that we like to practice something over and over again? And this is one of the reasons why after we talk about dogs, we also talk about people. Because the reasons why we don't have what we want in life, or there's things that are very challenging for us, like getting fit, or like getting a new car, or having a good job, or having more money, or like having better relationships. The reason why those things are difficult is because we get stuck on the same things and we don't change effectively. Changing is hard, and it's not also only hard, but it's also scary. We humans are wired to actually try to stay doing the same thing because that's comfortable and it feels good. And if you really think about all the biggest moments where you grew the most, they were moments where you had the hardest time because it forced you to grow and change. You had no choice. And if you didn't, you were going to be miserable. So you had to change. It's kind of forced, right? So this is why being flexible and working through this with your dog is actually going to make you a better person. Now, working with your dog is not going to change your neural pathways. We can talk about that later, but you experiencing that with your dog and you also being able to change things while you're interacting with your dog is going to make you a better person. It's going to give you some flexibility. Okay, so then we have, let's review again. Flexibility is majorly important. It's defined as being able to choose a different way of being, a different emotion, a different physical action when something occurs to you or you go and experience something new, a different environment. Okay, so that's what flexibility means. So far, we talked about a few ways to create flexibility. Number 1, don't have a routine that's set on time. Number 2, play object games. Number 3, play, mark, or bed manners and get the dog to go to those items in a different way. Okay, number 4, play me games in different ways, different size, different speeds, and vary it. And remember, the trigger for the dog to play a me game is looking at you. That's how the dog can trigger you. So the dog has the power. They know that if they go to a new situation and they're looking at you, something's going to happen that's going to be fun. Right? Okay, next. Do anybody have any question about this so far? Go for it, Stuart and Anitra, go for it. You're muted though, I can't hear you.
Hi, I just wanted to know if you have any more examples of proximity and engagement games.
Yes, I have a lot of those examples. So I have shown you a few while we were walking together.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show a couple more and I'm gonna put them on a video on Facebook for this group, and you'll see a couple more. There are some that I did not teach you specifically because I didn't want Quattro to practice those. Okay, so I will tell you the ones I want you to practice, okay? Just because I want Quattro to be very successful.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have one question. You never talk about using a clicker when dogs are doing. Okay.
No.
Yes.
So
yes.
basically, I'm gonna tell you my success with clickers. I can click the clicker very well. I have excellent timing. But when I'm training my dog, where is the clicker? Oh my gosh, where is the clicker? Where did he go? So, and then you're walking in the middle of winter, the click is frozen. It won't click. Oh, it got wet. You can't hear it anymore. So that's my experience with clickers. Now I have a clicker that will never not function and it's attached to my face. And yes, that I always have available. So even though clicker training is amazing, it is really amazing. If you have a place where you don't have any changes in the environment, you can use it no problem. But having a 4-season place is really, really difficult. Plus, you have to carry it with you all the time, everywhere. So I find voice is a lot more effective. Now, the reason why we like clickers is because it's very different sound than everything else in the environment. And most people always forget to say yes when a dog does their behavior. Now, if you're in this Zoom call though, it means that you really care about your dog. So I guarantee you're gonna make it a purpose to say yes when the dog does what you want it. And I'm constantly gonna be reminding you, say yes. You say yes? Did I hear a yes? Wasn't loud enough. I don't know if you said yes. You know what I mean? So that's key. So when the soon as the dog nails a behavior, like you put the item on the ground and the dog says yes, boom, that's done. Yes. And then it doesn't matter when you bring the treat. Okay, that yes is the single most important thing. Okay, now you're totally welcome to use a clicker. But if you're like me and you walk in the rain and you walk in no matter what environment you have, chances are your clicker is going to malfunction and you have a dog that's dependent on your clicker. Okay, so that's why I don't use it, but it's a great tool. And if you're doing agility or nose work, I do use clickers for those things because they're indoors. Okay, so if I'm indoors, I will use clicker for certain behaviors that are very difficult to teach, for sure. But it comes when real life application and being outside, I don't use the clicker as much.
Okay,
Thank you.
good to know.
Okay, no
Thanks.
problem, no problem. Anybody else has a question so far? Are we good? So, okay, the next step about playing games that involve flexibility. So, has anybody ever heard of the game called Simon Says? Okay, Simon Says is an excellent game to play with your dog because it builds that flexibility. Now, when you start playing Simon Says, make sure that you start with a behavior that your dog really likes. So, for example, Senshin, one of my dogs, he loves laying down. So I will go like, I'll put him in a room or on a leash outside and I'll go, Simon Says down. And he downs and say, yes. And I give him a treat. And then I'm going to say, Simon Says sit. And you know what's going to happen? He's going to lay down because he has no flexibility and he loves to lay down. So then I go, oops. And I don't reward him from that. And I keep moving with him. I keep moving with it. I say, Simon Says sit. And he lays down again. So I say, oops. And I keep walking with him. I keep walking with him. And I say, ready. So if he lays down, I say free. So he breaks and he's moving with me again. And then I say, Simon Says sit. And then he sits and say, yes. And I give him a treat. So now the dog has to be flexible. You can't just do what you did before. You actually have to listen to what Simon says. So now for this particular behavior, if you have a really young puppy, okay, there may be only 3 behaviors that they know. Sit, down, and touch. Okay, it's one of those, or those kind of things. So you have to play with only those 3 behaviors. But if your dog is older, make sure that you put your behaviors on their verbal cues, because that's how you play Simon Says, with the verbal cues, and anybody can do it. I have children come and they love doing Simon Says with dogs because it's hilarious. You say side and the dog flops over. You say crawl and the dog crawls, right? So I can help you develop some of those behaviors that you can use during Simon Says. But that's another game that is amazing to play with your dog. Simon Says. So then at the beginning, play it in your house with your dog off leash, right? And you say, Simon says, and you look at your dog and you say, sit. And if they sit, yes, treat, right? If they don't, help them a little bit, lure them. But don't make it too easy, because then you lose the whole idea of Simon says, right? And again, we're talking about some games that we have that we can use to create flexibility. Depending on where your dog is and the age of your dog is how you can play those games. So far, so good? Everybody good with Simon says? All right, excellent. So next for the next one. Okay, let me give you a couple of commands before we go to the next one of Simon Says games that you can look up to or like you can do. Does everybody have a place to write? Does everybody have something to take notes on? I'll give you like a second to get something. Okay, perfect. So you can play Simon Says with down, sit, and stand. You can do side. You can say paw right and paw left. You can do wave hello, wave goodbye. You can do head up and head drop. So those are the very simple ones that you can start with, and then I can help you with the rest. Then there's more complicated, like go right, go left, back up, go forward, freeze, and then crawl, roll over, those things, but those are a little bit more complex. So it takes a little bit longer to teach the dog to do it on command. Now, Misty knows all of those, Bruce. So you should be able to do Simon Says with some of those for sure. Okay. All right. Next. So the last thing that you can, how you can create flexibility in your dog is behavior modification. Now, why is it that you can create flexibility with behavior modification? Because every time you change a behavior that your dog constantly does for a different one, you're creating flexibility in the brain. Okay, so for example, if your dog loves to sit down and give you the right paw only to dry her, okay, always the right paw first. If you change it to the left paw, okay, first, that's behavior modification. You're changing something that the dog usually does. Now, that's an example of a behavior that is not a bad thing, but you can have a behavior like jumping up on people. That behavior, jumping up on people, is something a dog usually gets stuck on. And so if you teach the dog not to jump on people, then you can actually create flexibility in the brain because the dog now is being challenged to think differently. Now, if you want to know like the actual science behind flexibility and the science behind that wall of understanding, there's basically a whole bunch of neurons in the brain. And neurons are connected to each other through arms like this. And whenever the dog does a behavior very often and always the same, that connection gets really strong. It kind of gets cemented. And that's why it's no longer flexible. So what I want to do is I want to break that cement and create some flexibility on those behaviors, create new ones that are actually supportive to living with the dog. And then when I create those new ones, then I do want to make those strong. I do want to create some cement on those. However, my dog shouldn't be stuck as when they perform that particular task, because I can ask that task while I'm moving, when I'm standing, when I'm outside, when I'm inside, when there's another person, when another person says it. So that is also flexible, but that particular behavior is strong. So that's actually a little bit of how it works in the brain. All right, are we good with that information? So now let's review just quickly about how to create flexibility in the brain. So we create flexibility by not having a routine that has the same times, and by the way, that is also involved on feeding your dog, not from a bowl, but by training with your dog. okay? Because that builds a ton of flexibility. If you feed your dog from a bowl, they're not doing anything for their food, so that's not flexible. But if you're working with the food, that's very flexible. So the next one is playing object games. The next one is mark training and bed manners, going in different ways to those. The next one is me games, okay? The next one is, hold on, I lost the train, my thought of train. Yeah, the next one is Simon Says, right? And the next one is behavior modification. So those are all games that build flexibility. Now, when you're doing behavior modification with something like reactivity or nipping or barking or fear or any of that kind of stuff, it is very, very important that you build the games not in the presence of the trigger. Because think about it. If a concept doesn't exist in your brain and then I trigger you, how are you supposed to use that concept if it doesn't exist? The only thing you're gonna be able to do is punish your dog or create some kind of negative experience. So I wanna work on those things away from the triggers, so then I can then bring the trigger in, and then the dog will be familiar with the concepts. Now, this is a law, okay? This is a law of living creatures. There's always fear when you don't know something. And there's always confidence when you do know something. So if you teach the games in a different setting, the dog is gonna find comfort within those games, and whatever triggered that fear is gonna disappear. Because as soon as you introduce those games in that situation that had the trigger, there's the comfort on those games, and there's that confidence that has been built through those games. So that's why I wanna play games. And I mean, think about it. The things that you remember the most in life is definitely not when you were working or when you were in school. We forget all of that stuff. It's the things we remember is the trip where my pants fell, I broke my shoe, I was with my best friend, she got sick, and all these things. Those are the memories that you remember the most. It's when you're having fun, when you're doing things that are not like routine, right? All right, so we have finished the concept of flexibility with the dogs. Now let's talk a little bit, with just a few minutes, on the concept of building flexibility with the brain of humans, and then we'll go over questions that you have from last week or anything that you like some assistance with. All right, so to build flexibility in humans, okay, there's a concept that you have to understand, and this is how the mind actually functions. So in the latest science, it is now research, and this is not set on a stone because we still lack the technology to really figure out things effectively. But right now we know that your conscious mind, when you can think and actually do something just by right there making a decision, is only 5% of your actions. 5%. The remainder is your subconscious and your unconscious. That leaves 95%. So if you want to effectively change a behavior that you have, wishful thinking and affirmations is not going to work out for you so well. You're going to have to do those a lot for a very, very, very long time to even get a little bit of that. So the way to actually change something and become more flexible is actually to change your subconscious and your unconscious. Now, long time ago, they thought that genetics actually had the subconscious and unconscious program, so there was nothing you can do to change that. But now, through actually seeing generations grow, we have now understood scientifically that a person can pass new genetics, new information from one generation to another. So for example, if you were very bad at technology, but you use technology a lot during your life, and then you have a kid, your kid is going to be good at technology. But that wasn't passed down since your grandparents. That was something that happened now. So again, it is difficult to prove all of this because we're still lacking the ability to measure all these things. But there are tools that you can use to increase your flexibility and the way you process information. One of the tools that we use and the people that have service dogs that work with me, and some other people that I'm working very closely with, and the people I got training for, because a lot of these concepts, by the way, don't come from me. They come from people that are a lot more experienced. They have a lot more knowledge. They work with a lot more dogs. They work with a lot more people, and they actually seen the changes and have experienced all of it. And now they're able to pass that information on. So some of the tools that I like to use is the education technology that I've been using and talking to you about is called TechnoTutor. So that's what I use to create a more flexible mind. Now, if you want to create a more flexible mind by yourself, you can always come and share and look at this technology that we use. We have a Clubhouse meeting every few Sundays. It's gonna be on the website and it's free. You can show up and we can share some of these things with you. Okay, now why are we sharing this? Why do we even matter to talk about flexibility in people? Now, our motto, like what we stand for, is evolving the human-dog relationship. If I want a dog to evolve, remember, dogs are your mirror images. Unless you're changing too, it's not actually gonna work out. We cannot expect other people to change when we're not changing ourselves. We cannot actually expect our dogs to change unless we change how we interact with them and how we perceive them. So because we're in this process where we believe that dogs can be actually of service to humanity, and you can be of service to humanity too, we want to give everybody tools to change themselves and change their dogs. And this is why we do this Zoom call. So we want to create a group of people, a community that we don't have to fear walking down the street that a dog is going to bite us. We don't have to fear that our dog is going to misbehave and is going to do something bad. We can know that we can support them and have them grow, and they can be of help to other people and other dogs. And that's why we're here. Okay, so Clubhouse meetings are meetings that we do for people, for growing the brain of people, for changing ourselves, helping us through any challenge that we have. And those are some Sundays, every second Sunday of the month. They're free and they're at the Canaan Valley Center. Okay, and they're super fun. We play games because that's how we change. We play games, but except they're human games, not dog games. Okay, so now the next. Does anybody have any question or like to comment about anything that you need help with or experienced last week? Anybody have a particular question about their dog, something they want to know more about?
I do, Valley.
Okay, go for it, Mike.
There's a few things, so I'll just ask like one and then let people go on. So it seems that this goes along with the whole behavior modification topic that you were talking about. Living in Victoria, we have acorns.
Oh.
A lot of acorns falling, like thousands of them. So Vision is really, 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 really good at leaving, when I say leave it, of dropping the acorn. And she really picks up another one again. Like it's something that she adores, that and leaves going. She's just like, so leaf it is the new joke because there's leaves blowing. But how do we work at supporting the maintenance of a behavior rather than the playfulness?
That is an excellent question. That's an excellent question. And what I'm going to ask you right now, what I'm going to explain to you is two things. There's a difference between suppression and repression. Okay. So when you have a behavior you don't want and you want to stop it, like actually stop it, that will be like suppression. Okay. So suppression eventually builds resentment. And then the dog feels that it has to be sneaky and do it when you're not looking. Okay, because they feel like you're stopping them from doing something that they really want to do. Same thing happens with people, you guys. Same thing. But the difference is that you can actually do expression. So you can stop the behavior, but you can also have an expression. So what you want to do is you want to look at what she's doing. So is the acorn falling, and is that when she goes for it? Or is it the acorn already there?
Already there.
Okay, so what you want to do is you want to come up with lots of items of the same item that will be safe for her to have. okay? And then you wanna toss them right there. And then when she goes for that item, you're gonna say yes, and then you're gonna grab another one and bounce another one, and you're gonna say yes, and you're gonna grab another one and bounce another one, and you're gonna say yes. So she's getting an outlet for that energy that she has. Now at the same time, and leave it, right? And leave it. I'm also practicing that behavior, but instead of just suppressing it, there's also an outlet for it. So for the next couple of walks, let's say that you bring 3-4 balls with you, and the balls are going to be small, because if you get big balls are very different from acorns, right? So it may not be the best, like to match the energy and the behavior, it not may be the best. So what I want to do is I want to get smaller balls, and I bought some like, and you know what? Damascans don't really swallow things. Like they barely destroy things. So having a small ball is gonna be fine as long as you're there watching her. I will never leave her unattended with a small ball. You know what I mean? But you can play with the small balls, and they're usually very gentle with their mouth, and they can play with it, right? So then I will have a couple of those when I'm going for walks, and before I even get to the area where there's the acorns, maybe on the driveway where there's cement, I start playing with those and getting that energy out. And you know, she's such a young puppy. She's full of like happy, clowny, like magic energy.
Yeah.
You know, she's like, this is magical. There's an acorn. I never seen one before. And I definitely don't think I ever showed her an acorn. Okay, so that's that. And now when it comes to the leaves, how do leaves blow? Kind of sideways and stuff like that. So having like a string on a toy and like pulling the string and moving the string, that will be like a super big hit for that particular behavior. So again, I get out of my house, I'm in pavement, and I'm playing this game where I'm pulling the string and my dog is chasing it, and then I say, and then I have a fun and I laugh my head off for 2-5 minutes, and then I say free, and then I put it away and I go walking down the street. And then she sees a leaf blowing, and you'll notice she won't even care because she already played. And or she'll care and you say leave it, and she doesn't feel like she has to do it anyways, because there's an outlet to it. So that's really, really a great question. Now, when it comes to puppies, a behavior gets established about after you've done it and practice it about 385 times. That's 385 leave-its with 385 leaves with 385 acorns. Right? So the way their brain is actually shaped is slightly different from a human. You have the ability to generalize information extraordinarily fast. But dogs don't have that ability. I mean, you don't have to believe me, you can test it. Right? That is the main challenge that I have. So you have to be kind of persistent on a particular thing for a while before you get like massive results. Yeah?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, sounds good. Awesome. Does anybody have anything else they got a little bit of help with?
We're going to ask the kitchen question.
Sure.
The kitchen question. So the kitchen is a place where we don't want vision because there's hot things and boiling water and onions and garlic and chocolate, and it's just not safe for people or dogs to be there together. We also have a kitchen that's probably 6 feet by 3 feet. It's tiny. So she barely fits in it, but she loves being there. She knows that it's the center of the house. Food and treats and all things wonderful come from the kitchen, and she desperately wants to be in it, especially when we are in there and preparing food. So, you know, we say, we've got a line taped on the floor that she's not supposed to cross, and she knows it. She's really good. And she knows that she's supposed to go to her bed when we're in the kitchen. When she comes sneaking into the kitchen, I say, and she goes to her bed and I give her a treat. She's like, this is great. And so I go back to the kitchen and she sneaks back into the kitchen. I say, and she goes to her bed and I say, you know, good bed, and give her a treat. And then sometimes I do the ninja thing where I see she's out there and she's being quiet, and I will ninja around the corner and give her a treat. But
Yeah.
what she thinks is that if she goes into the kitchen and comes out again, that's the treat.
Yes. So
Yes,
once,
it.
so yeah, 100%. So what you want to do is number one, you want to make sure that you break that habit right from the get-go. So the best way to do it is tie her up so she can't get to the kitchen. Okay, that is like puppies. It's very difficult not to reward them for the wrong things
Yeah.
at times. So you have to do a combination of things. At times I want to tie her up. So because I'm going to break that behavior, she's not going to be able to do it anymore. And I still able to toss her treats on the bed. So now I'm actually creating that muscle memory where she knows that it is for being on the bed that I'm getting the treats.
Right. Okay, that's what we needed to know because
Okay, for sure.
she's so smart. She's like, oh, if I go into the kitchen and come out again, I get a treat.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes they'll go head in the kitchen and run to their bed and go, you know. So yeah, for sure. So you want to do that. Another thing I will highly recommend as well is not only tossing treats when she's on the bed, but also giving her something to lick like this is a behavior that is very pacifying and calming.
Okay.
So what I would do is I would go put her on her bed, tie her up, and then give her something to lick. Now, if you're looking for something to lick, what can I do to do something to lick? Is you can get a metal container or there are some licky mats. So they're calming mats that they sell on pet stores that you can put like peanut butter on them or cream cheese or like squished blueberries or raw food or like anything. And then you can put in the freezer and then you give them to them and then they lick it. Now, my experience with those licky mats and Tamascans is that they literally flip it over, toss it in the air, and then the things fall apart and then they crunch it.
Yeah,
So
they did that at the vet, and they're like, "Oh, here you go," and it lasted 4 seconds, and then they're like, "Oh, we'll bring you another one." It lasted 4 seconds. I'm like, "Vision, lie down." And she was like, "Oh."
Yeah. So it doesn't really work. It really doesn't work that well.
Yeah.
Right. So with dogs that are really intelligent, but you can make your own. So I actually got these like really nice, like kind of metal containers that are for kind of like baking. So they're sturdy. And then what I did is, and they look like a bread, like for baking bread. And then what I did is I slobbered like peanut butter on them and then yogurt and then peanut butter. And then I put them in the freezer. And that was difficult. They don't like chewing metal. So they kind of, and they're like paw, and they're like other paw, and like putting their head in, and that was definitely really successful for the Tamascans. That worked really, really well.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay, so that was good. But for you guys, Russell, for you and Melinda, for you guys, a licky mat will be perfect. I don't think she'll toss it in the air and flip it over and things like that. So that's really, really good. Okay, anybody else has another question? No, we're good? Well, fantastic. So I hope you guys can try some of those things. And then if you have questions, you can always film yourself doing it and doing the exercise and then send it to us or put it on Facebook on our group. And we'll be able to help you out to tell you any feedback that you have. And you know what? Even when you're doing things wrong, it's awesome because that's how we learn. That's how we actually get to interact with our dog better and better every time. Talking dog is a new language. You need to integrate it into your body. It's going to take a while. And that's why I'm so adamant about you learning the vocabulary that I talk about. Because the vocabulary is going to allow you to learn dog language and dog psychology and how dogs work much faster. If you know what I'm talking about. Like, I mean, think about in this conversation, whoever knows Proximity 1, you know what I was talking about. Like, if you haven't done that exercise, you'll be like, what happened? Right? So then we have to take time to explain that and things like that. So anyways, hopefully this was very helpful to you guys. And if you have any questions, you feel free to write them. I will put this call on the Facebook page. You can always send it to your friends if you think their dog needs a little bit of flexibility and things like that. And share, if you can share our Facebook page and share with other people, and that's really, really helpful. Thank you so much. And if you have a particular, by the way, this topic was, somebody asked for this topic. Somebody wrote to me and they asked me what they can do to improve their dog from barking at strangers. And I looked at the dog and I looked at the behavior and I realized the dog was really lacking flexibility, and that's why I chose this subject for this class. So if you have a specific subject that you would like to talk about or something, you can let me know ahead of time and we'll make a Zoom about that subject in particular. Okay?
Okay.
Also, you guys have a fantastic night. Let me know if there's anything else we can help you with.
That's great.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thanks,
Ciao.
Allie. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Thank you, Allie.
Thank you.